One. And we're live.
And we're live. Hello, Ericka. Good evening.
Hello, Robert.
Is
What's
it live or
happening?
is it live or is it Memorex? So you know how we always have to start with something. I'm sorry to go there, but knock knock.
Who's there?
Fort.
Ford who?
Fort Knox. Let me in. I'm worth my weight in gold. I mean, come you know, I mean, really. I mean, 3 times in 100 years, people have been to Fort Knox to see if we still have gold. Now, I do believe in trust but verify. But I mean, other than Goldfinger, right, which was, the James Bond movie, I mean, how would you move all that gold out of there anyways?
Very covertly, secretly.
In the still of the night with the army base around you? Yeah, I don't think so. But,
Here's the thing. I put nothing past the government. Nothing.
I understand. So,
Yeah.
all right. So let's jump to. I had to start there. The whole Fort Knox thing is just making me crazy. In any event, let's
right.
jump to the show, and then we have a very special guest,
Yes.
Rabbi Raphael Shore, in his new book, "Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew," which is really groundbreaking. So I want to get to that, but let's roll them and go from there.
All right.
Hello, and welcome to Of the People. Why are Jews so liberal? It's a question I have been asked repeatedly by a lot of my non-Jewish and conservative friends. And the short answer is Jews have historically been deeply involved in fighting for equality and civil rights and the protection of marginalized community. Because for Jews, fighting for the underdog and the oppressed has been a cornerstone of our Jewish values for centuries. There's a concept called tikkun olam, which is heal the world. The idea of repairing the world has been at the core of Jewish life and our Jewish values, guiding our involvement in the world. But today, it is crystal clear that those very same movements that we supported, those social justice movements that the Jewish community has historically supported, are increasingly hostile towards Jews and are openly anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. And the majority of Jews now find themselves caught between their commitment to these liberal ideals and the reality that these movements are dangerous to their very safety and survival. And it's a contradiction that echoes a dark chapter in our history, in the world's history, the rise of Nazi Germany. Because in the 30s, the Jews in Germany were also deeply involved in progressive and liberal movement and didn't fully recognize the growing threat of Hitler and the Nazis until it was too late. Now, looking back, we now know the dangers were clear, but at the time, many Jews failed to see that the very movements that they had aligned with could and would soon turn against them. And let's be clear, Nazism didn't arrive overnight. It crept in piece by piece until it was too late. And when you fast forward that to today, we see the same pattern. Jews, particularly in liberal circles, have long aligned themselves with movements to promote equality and social justice. And honestly, many continue to do so despite the fact that the movements have now clearly shown themselves to be anti-Semitic. The BDS movement, Black Lives Matter, and so many others are now openly anti-Zionist and anti-Israel, to the point where it's become almost mainstream within the progressive circles. And yet many Jews still support these movements despite the fact that their open hostility towards Israel and Jewish identity is absolutely undeniable. Just like in the 1930s Nazi Germany, Jews are once again faced with an undeniable contradiction and a choice. The participation in these causes is increasingly self-destructive, especially as they become targets of the very movement that they help to build. So the question is, not only why are Jews so liberal, but why do they continue to support these movements despite the very real threats to our community? And here's where there's that painful parallel to Nazi Germany. It becomes all too clear, because just as many Jews in the 1930s refused to acknowledge what was in front of them and the growing danger of the Nazi regime, so too many Jews today refuse to face the fact that the progressive movement that they support have openly turned against them. And the failure in the 1930s to confront the rise of Nazism led to the Holocaust and 6 million Jews being killed. And today, America and the world's Jewish community are at risk of repeating the same mistake. and refusing to acknowledge the threat that's right in front of them until it's too late. And then there's a figure like Donald Trump, whose policies, particularly on Israel, but on so many other issues, align with the Jewish interest and community in so many ways, whether it's human rights, the right of self-defense, the rule of law, legal immigration, and clearly one of the most pro-Israel presidents of any US president ever, all align with Jewish values. Yet Jews are still overwhelmingly anti-Trump, not because of his policies, but because they have somehow been brainwashed by the media and the vanguard of the progressive left that he's a racist and he's a Nazi, when his policies, his positions, and his appointments clearly show he is not. The contradiction is stark. Jews continue to support progressive causes despite the fact that these causes are now clearly and openly hostile to their very existence. They ignore the very real and growing threat. So the question is, will Jews continue to ignore the dangers as Jews did in the years leading up to Nazism? And will history repeat itself in ways that no one wants to consider? We must ask the question, will Jews confront the reality of the danger we face today, or will the vast majority continue to support the movement that in the end may likely lead to another Holocaust? Because, ladies and gentlemen, never again is now. And that's the monologue. Ericka, back in the studio.
Robert. What is going on in the world today?
Exactly. And we are, Ericka, as you know, thrilled to have with us a very, all our guests are special, but this is truly a special guest, Rabbi Raphael Shore, producer, director, author, human rights activist, prolific in this area, who maybe can help us make heads or tails of this, especially with the monologue, and his new book, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? Rabbi Shore, it is indeed an honor and a pleasure to welcome you to Of the People.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate being here.
Happy to have you here. We're hoping you can help us make some sense of this because, you know, growing up in the Jewish community, and I, you know, a little bit similar background. So I grew up sort of not observant, not really. I mean, I was Jewish by culture, but I would liken it to a high holiday Jew, right? It's sort of like the Christmas, Easter version of Christianity where we observed high holidays. But as I got older, as I understood, you know, my roots and who I was, I became much more observant, much more tied into it. And yet my friends will all ask me, all of the monologue, why Jews are so liberal. Do you have a better answer than I have?
That is a great question. I do have a very good answer. I don't know if it's better than yours. I thought yours was very enlightening, and you had a very beautiful way of expressing, we say in Hebrew, looking favorably upon the Jewish impulse to be liberal and to be democratic comes from a very good place, an idealistic place. But unfortunately, it can become misplaced. My answer of how it is that the Jews, let me step one thing back. I think that the fundamental assertion is incorrect, that the majority of Jews are not voting for Trump. I think that's incorrect. Isn't that interesting? That's already interesting, right? So I'm going to start with that one because and I've seen a whole paper written on this, and I think it's important to set the record straight because it really looks bad on us that we don't support the president, even though we're so pro-Israel. So I think the majority of the Jews do. Why? Because there are segments of the Jewish population that don't really show up in the polls. I'm talking about Russian Jews, first generation, second generation Russian Jews who came from the former Soviet Union. I'm talking about Israeli Jews who number in the hundreds of thousands, first, second generation in America. And I'm talking about Persian Jews. All of these groups and Sephardim from the Jews from the Middle East. All those people, which make up probably at this point 30% of the Jewish people in America, they're all huge majority, 90% probably voting for Trump. It's the old school. It's like you were saying, you and I come from a similar background, Ashkenazi. It's the old school that show up in the polls and are, yes, perhaps only 30% plus that voted for Trump. But when you add those two groups together, the ones that are counted and the ones that are not counted, you already get the majority that I think are actually supporting Trump. Then you got the quiet people too. So I think most Jews, even in America, are actually on the right side of history and the right side of Israel. And I think that's an important thing to take note of. I'll happily share with you that article that I wrote.
And I would love to see that because, and again, I'm an old political guy from back in the day. The only numbers that I saw in exit polling were that somewhere one exit poll showed 21%, one exit poll showed 31% of people who acknowledge being Jewish voted for Trump, which means at that 70%, or even if I believe Ben Shapiro thought it might have gone as high as 40%, but even that, it's a 60-40 split, and that's being magnanimous. So I would love to see if you had numbers that are different.
Yeah, it's because the Persian Jews don't come out as Jews. The Russian Jews don't come out as Jews in these polls. They're not discovered there. In any case, having said that, so I think that's an important point. And I the way I describe it is like this: Jewish people, although they care, for the great majority, care a lot about Israel, but because they have that liberal tendency, and because for non-religious Jews, progressivism and social cause, social values of the left have become their religion. As a result, every human being, when they come into to consider the vote, there's 10 different factors. There's foreign policies, there are economics, there's social issues. For these liberal Jews who are not so connected with their Judaism, their number 1, 2, and 3 are things like abortion and helping the Black community and helping the poor and those social issues. Israel comes like number 5, 6, 7. So they end up voting for those social issues, which is the Democrat Party. Then what do they do? Well, what do you do about Israel? You're supporting a candidate who's not as supportive of Israel. So instead of being honest and just admitting, okay, I'm voting for abortion, I'm voting for these liberal causes, even though the candidate's not as pro-Israel, they rationalize. And that's the human tendency. They rationalize. So they rationalize that also my vote is going to the pro-Israel candidate, because they don't want to say they're voting for a candidate, even though it's number 6. So that's my explanation. If you put Israel, if you're a Jew who puts Israel as number 1, 2, or 3 on your considerations for who you're going to vote for, then you're going to have the clarity to understand who really is the better candidate for Israel and the Jewish people. But the liberal secular Jews tend to really have Israel lower in that set of 10 priorities. That's how I understand it.
Got it. So I want to jump to your new book, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? Now, you have 18 movies to your credit as producer, as writer, director. I've seen Obsession. I've seen a few of the other ones as well. But now you're going to print media, and I assume it was no coincidence it came out October 7th, 2024. But this is which was so appropriate. This is a different kind of book, is it not? It's not really about anti-Semitism necessarily.
Yes.
I mean, it's a philosophical analysis, or trying to understand the historical struggles of the Jewish community and why the Jews, right? And I've struggled
to name what this book is about, and then I also made a film about it as well called Tragic Awakening. But the book is called like Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? Learning to Love the Lessons of Jew Hatred. So that's already very interesting and provocative, you see. So the idea is that, yes, it's a film about the deeper roots of Jew hatred.
Right.
But that's not really my main purpose in writing the book. The main purpose was to see that through the lens, through understanding the depth of the reasons for anti-Semitism, we can actually understand the reason and purpose of the Jewish people. And that is incredibly revealing. And we discover that most of the Jew hatred is actually because we're Jewish. And if they hate us for being Jewish, let's be Jewish. Let's embrace it, because the Jewish people have actually been beaten down We don't know who we are. We've lost sight to a large degree of who we are. And the book is really a book that starts with why the Jews, from the anti-Semitism, and becomes why the Jews, about why do we even exist and what are we really here for? What are we trying to do? And even that's even a bigger topic, because it's really about why are all human beings here and what is the unique role of the Jewish people in that bigger picture of world history.
Well, I love, excuse me, the way that you framed this. You know, as a practicing Christian, you know, I've often been confused about people who don't want to admit that they're Christian or don't want to share their faith or don't want to talk about it. And I'm like, you know, it says, or they're afraid, oh, people are going to be mad because they think I hate them or whatever. And I'm like, it says in our book that we will be hated in his name. Like, because of our belief, we will be hated. Now, obviously, that's different than Judaism, but like you said, be Jewish. You know what? They're going to hate you anyway. So just be Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that same way about all people of faith.
Yes. In other words, and in particular, I agree with you. This is about all people of faith. And that is what the book is about. The book is saying that essentially, when you bring into the world a message of faith, of moral responsibility, of the burden of freedom, and being a moral, responsible human being, some people are not going to like you for it, because you're pushing something heavy. So what I bring out in the book is that Adolf Hitler understood this, and he was trying to wipe out the Jews because we were bringing this humanitarian ideology into the world about moral freedom and about ethics. And he looked at it as Judeo-Christian ethics. He understood that the Jews started it, but the Christians had a huge impact on humanity, bringing these ideas of moral responsibility to the world. And he rejected that. And so we explore that very deeply in the book. And it reflects, I say, it's very provocative, but I say Adolf Hitler and the Torah, the Bible, have the same explanation for Jew hatred. Because Hitler understood who the Jews were.
Wait, you have to help me with that one.
I'm gonna explain.
Help me with that one. I need to understand that is a hell of a provocative statement.
Yes. So Adolf Hitler, I just explained very briefly. Of course, the book goes into it in much more detail. His ideology, that the Jewish people were bringing a ethics of humanitarianism, love your neighbor, brotherhood of all men, human rights, ethical monotheism. The Jews brought into that world, that ideology must be destroyed. The Torah says that at Mount Sinai, hatred came into the world. It's a play on the words, because in Hebrew, Mount Sinai, Hebrew is Sinai, Har Sinai, and hatred is Sin'ah. Sinai, Sin'ah, very close. So it's a play on words. When God gave to the world when God gave to the Jewish people the Torah, the 10 Commandments, and the Torah at Mount Sinai, which was a mission to bring these ideas to humanity, hatred to the Jews came into the world at the same time, because God understood that, yes, it's amazing that there was going to be resistance to bringing those ideas into the world.
The straight and narrow path. Who wants to follow that?
Anti-Semitism. So Adolf Hitler and the Torah are saying the same thing, because that is it's the resistance to the Jewish message, it's resistance to Jewish impact, the push, the drive to, which sometimes comes out in success, but it's pretty heavy.
Wow.
So is it that one can't is this a yin yang kind of an argument, that one can't exist without the other? That one that the hatred of Judaism, or the hatred of religion, because you're really talking about Judeo-Christian values, right? When we're talking about, much broader, and I would argue, the whole, as we've talked about ad infinitum in the show, the whole concept of the river to the sea and driving the Jews into the sea, which is what they're trying to do, which I say to my Christian friends, I said, if you're Christian, you're next, because it's not just about us, right? It's about those values.
Yeah.
But and my father used to say you can sometimes tell the caliber of an individual by who doesn't like them, which, it's sort of, a similar concept. So
exactly, yeah.
But I guess my question, because there are some provocative statements here, like, so when you say that Hitler was right, what was he right about?
Very good. Because obviously, I'm glad you said it, because I do want to clarify. Obviously, Hitler was one of the most evil people,
of course,
in human history. So I'm not questioning that. What I'm questioning, and what the book questions and challenges, is the conventional wisdom about Adolf Hitler. The conventional wisdom is that Hitler was just a raving lunatic. He was a madman who was just a megalomaniac for power. Somehow he whipped up the German masses into an emotional rave, and that caused them to say, let's wipe out the Jews. No ideas.
Because that can be done by a total madman. That's crazy.
Exactly. Now, you think about it for a moment. This Germany, if someone wanted to go to the best university on the planet in those days, where did they go? Germany. Yeah, that was the most it was the most sophisticated, highly intellectual place. And then somehow this guy Hitler brainwashed them all. It doesn't make sense. So the fact is that he had a very well-developed ideology. His ideology basically said that the Jewish people, he said, World War II was a war of Jews against Germans. All else is facade and illusion. Isn't that remarkable? And what he was saying was, on the surface, I'm fighting Britain, I'm fighting Russia, but behind it is an ideological war that has to do with the Jewish people being a spiritual superpower. And the Jewish people, his only real threat is that it's the only real threat, because the Judeo-Christian worldview is his only real threat. And even though Christians had done more to bring the Judeo-Christian ideas into European civilization, he understood that the Jews initiated it. The Jews were the originators. And more than that, that it was in the Jewish spiritual DNA, and to continue doing it. So Hitler said, the Jews are a spiritual and moral superpower, bringing an ideology that's going to be destructive to humanity. They've been super successful, not only in all aspects of life, but specifically in bringing this ideology in the world. And since it's in their spiritual DNA, I need to kill every single one of them. Genocide. So in that regards, he was right. And that's why the whole book is about flipping it on its head and saying, hey, Jewish people, hey, world, let's be honest. You've beat us up for 2,000 years. Our psyche's been messed up. You've messed us up. We're not so proud about being Jewish anymore because we don't know, and we've lost track of who we are. As Elie Wiesel says, we're like a messenger who forgot our message. But I'm trying to wake us up. I'm trying to say, hey, we are that people. We are an incredibly beautiful people who have made an incredible impact on humanity in positive ways, except sometimes the message that we bring creates resistance. That resistance is Jew hatred. And it was part of the package. It was part of the package. We knew it going in. We knew it from Mount Sinai. We knew it from Abraham. God let us know there's going to be a lot of resistance. The resistance is called anti-Semitism. But this is our heritage, and it's actually a beautiful thing to be Jewish. And if you're not Jewish, get on the right side of history, because this is the story of humanity. This is the story of human history. Are we going to become more spiritual beings, more enlightened, or are we going to be more attached to the animal kingdom where might makes right? And that's the view that Hitler was trying to bring the world to.
Yeah.
Who's afraid of the big bad Jew? Ericka, do we have the cover? Let's bring it up. I know, Rabbi, you're holding the book, but we actually have a larger picture to show our listeners and our viewers. And then before we go to break, here it is, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew by Rabbi Raphael Shore. Where can they find the book? I assume Amazon and everywhere, but your website before we go to break?
Yeah. All the major places where you buy books, it's available, Amazon.com, and And of course, my website, raphaelshore.com, you can find out more about it and the corresponding film as well that comes with it. So enjoy it. Thank you. And we're going to talk about the cover when we come back. Yeah.
We are going to talk about the cover when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back on the other side of the break.
Yes. And just so you guys know, there are links for all the websites and the books and all the things in the description. So go check it out.
Socialism. The goal of socialism is communism. The world is quite familiar with socialism and the horrors socialism has brought with it. It wasn't that long ago. Actually, it's still with us. Socialism creeps into government slowly until it's too late. Socialism, the big lie. Yes, it could happen anywhere. This educational video was brought to you by the American Center for Education and Knowledge and paid for by people like you who care about the future of our democracy. Please help us continue our work educating the American public and consider supporting ASIC by making a tax-deductible donation at asicfund.org. And we are back of the people with Rabbi Raphael Shore, director, producer, writer, author, human rights activist. Rabbi, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Let's go.
Let's go. So I want to go to the book cover.
All
So
right.
Ericka, let's pull up the book cover because this is really, so to me, this is brilliant. It's taking something that was German propaganda during the war and repurposing the content, as the expression goes these days, into something that is big and beautiful and powerful. So maybe you can explain the cover to everyone, and then I want to show everyone where this came from.
Yeah.
Okay. What we talked about just before the break was I mentioned briefly that Elie Wiesel said the Jewish people are like a messenger who got knocked on the head, and we forgot that what the message was. We even forgot that we're messengers. And this is a very deep idea that I'm trying to help with this book to revive the Jewish people and help them remember that they're messengers. But after 2,000 years of consistent persecution, the Jewish psyche has really been deeply impacted. And it's very difficult for most Jews today. And Israeli Jews are different. They're stronger. But for American Jews and for the average Jewish person in the diaspora to stand up and proudly say, I'm Jewish. I love being Jewish. It's a privilege to be Jewish. It's a wonderful heritage. It's a responsibility, but it's something very special. And that's sad because we have such a heritage. We are a people who've shown such resilience, such goodness. We've made such an impact, and yet we've lost track, and it's difficult for us to be proud. So this book cover is trying to reflect that anti-Semitism is not so much hate as it is fear. That there's actually a fear of Jewish spiritual influence, Jewish power, Jewish success. And we want the Jew to feel very solid in his moral self-confidence is what I like to call it. Ruth Weiss calls it that. We want the Jews to have moral self-confidence with who they are. So this image portrays it. Strong Jew, very happy to be Jewish. And the anti-Semites, the Jew haters, with all their contradictions and their double standards and their irrationality underneath small people who are being ridiculous. So you've got Hitler, who's saying stop supporting genocide, as ridiculous that is. You've got the LGBTQ Hamas supporter, college student down there.
Right. I love that one. Yeah.
Somehow aligning himself with Hamas, even though the gays won't last more than a couple days in Gaza. Nope. And then you've got the Hamas guy who's actually saying, yeah, let's do genocide and kill you all. Right. But those guys are all little pathetic little bothers. They're mosquitoes that should be just bothering us. And anti-Semitism shouldn't bother us. Anti-Semitism should teach us our greatness, like your father said, like that you can tell a person by his enemies. The fact that the Jews persecuted and hated in every generation means we're relevant. The fact that in every generation evil finds the Jew means we're the opposite of evil. It means we're good.
Mm.
I
We're
love
making
that.
it. And that's
I
why
personally
evil.
love that.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what we need to take away. And the irony is, as you said, that we're flipping the narrative. The whole idea of this book is to flip the narrative. So even in the cover, we flip the narrative.
And folks, just so you see where this came from, Ericka, if you can put up the original propaganda poster from Nazi Germany from back in the day.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That
there it is. That was my inspiration for the book cover. This was the Nazi, the arrogant Nazi overlooking the pathetic Jews as they were imagined, and I said to myself, we need to flip this. They did a good job creating propaganda.
Yep.
It's a nice piece of art, and let's flip it on its head, because that's the idea here. Let's flip the narrative, and let's give Jews a sense of moral self-confidence and feel good about their greatness, so they can walk with their heads held high and realize that anti-Semitism should not bring us down. It should actually be a source of strength and inspiration. So I call this book an inspirational look at Jew hatred.
Ericka, you're in the feed?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you just can't see you. There you are.
Yeah, no, I was leaving the men folk to talk.
Okay, I just don't want to dominate. I just don't want to dominate the conversation, because then you're going to give me all sorts of static later. Robert, you talk too much.
No, this is so fascinating. I love the way that you're framing this, Rabbi, because my husband Benjamin and I often talk about this. He's Black, I'm a woman. I know it's hard to tell, but our affinity groups, if you will, or our whatever our demographics, we're supposed to be victims and feel like victims, and people use that as currency. It's used as currency in our culture to be a victim somehow, to be victimized, or whatever. And this is even, not only are you saying we're not victims, you're saying like this is proof that we're on the right track. This is something to be confident in. This is like it's like it's like confirmation that you're on the right track.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well said. And in the end, the one who pulls the victim card, and you want to play that for a generation, 2 generations, who's hurt most by that? It's the one playing the victim card. Yeah.
The ones that are playing the card, that are playing the right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. They don't realize it. They might get some short-term gain, but they're actually missing out. And when the Jewish people, once again, because I think a better title for the Jewish people, better than startup nation, is resilient nation. When the Jewish people came out of the Holocaust and had to fight again for the state of Israel, we weren't telling anybody victim card. We just wanted to live a life. That's what we want. Let's just live a good life. Let's have Shabbat. Let's light those candles. Let's have families, because you know what? We benefit. Let's make a living so we can provide for our children and send them to university and get an education. Let's live our lives. And that's the greatest use of freedom. And that's the greatest benefit.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, Rabbi, because obviously I've seen several of your movies, I've seen Obsession. There's clearly a threat coming from what the world wants to call radical Islam. That's certainly open to a much broader conversation about Islam and Islamic values. But how does that fit into this in terms of worldview? Because it's the three, and I'm being magnanimous here. There are 3 great religions in the world. Certainly, Jerusalem is it's the intersect of those 3 great religions. How do you see and integrate Islam into this, what I would call, when I say greater warfare, I don't mean physical warfare, I mean spiritual.
Yeah. Well, first of all, again, you see, when you talk about the 3 great religions, you see again the impact of the Jewish people, because it was Abraham's immediate descendants who started, who were both responsible for Western civilization, Rome, Christianity, that came through his grandson Esau, and Ishmael, who was his son, was the father of the Islamic people, the Arab Islamic people. So the huge impact on the spiritual future of the Jewish people, not always for the good, but for the most part good, came directly from Abraham. But the answer to your question is that, as you said, I've been bringing awareness of the threat of radical Islam to the world. And for some reason, I've been able to listen. That's what I do. I think that's what I do more than most people. I listen. So the reason I was able to warn and tell people early on about the threat of radicalism and the ideology behind it was because I listened to them. I didn't put some blinders on my face. I didn't interpret their words and say, no, what they mean is this, and put my Western sensibilities onto their words. No, this is what they said. And the same thing in this book I do with Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. I say, this is what he said. Don't make things up. Don't create a caricature of a nutty dictator who didn't know what he was talking about, who convinced the German people to do something they didn't know what he was talking about. I'm listening. And the fact is that it's one line, that the anti-Jewish sentiment that has gone throughout history has just continued. And in the book, I paint that how the radical Islamist world inherited Nazism and anti-Semitism from Hitler, the Mufti of Jerusalem, who was the leader. Mufti. Yeah, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who was the leader of the Islamic world, he was the father of Palestinian nationalism. He moved to Germany in 1941 and spent the rest of the year in Berlin as an honored guest of Adolf Hitler. This is in my book. He had a meeting with Hitler where he said that quote that to him. He said, Hitler said to the Mufti, I want you to lock this in your heart, that this is a war against the Jews. Don't get fooled by everything else. And when we're done in Europe, we're going to come wipe out the Jews in the Middle East. And the Mufti said, you're my man. And he joined partners, and he helped create a Muslim SS group. So interesting. Hitler hated Christianity, but he was fond of Islam. He didn't. So he understood that it's a bit of a different religion than Judaism and Christianity. That's fascinating too.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This is driving me crazy. I can't even handle this. How can I? How? Okay. This
Ericka, you got to get back to the mic. You got to get back to the mic.
I can't handle it. I'm like, how can you hate the Jews when your religion was founded by Jews? Like, it doesn't, it's the same for Christianity. I've never understood that. I'm like, you follow, your Messiah is a Jew, dude. Like, what are you, and I understand Islam does not consider Jesus the Messiah and whatever, but if you follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then we're cousins, bro. How can you want to murder me?
Yeah, it's deep psychology. That's the answer, Ericka. It's deep psychology. Now, I will refer to also to something really fascinating that answers your question that's in my book, and it is about the famous author Fyodor Dostoevsky, who answered this question in an indirect way. He wrote a book called The Brothers Karamazov. And in that book, he brings us back to the Inquisition in the Middle Ages, where 300 years of killing Jews in the name of Christianity, right? And the Grand Inquisitor, the one who's leading it all, one day gets a visitor. The visitor is Jesus himself, comes back to visit.
Oh, wow.
Comes back. And he comes and he reappears on the scene. And you would think that the Grand Inquisitor would say, hello, welcome. Don't you think I'm doing a great job? And instead, you know what he does?
What?
He imprisons Jesus. He says, Jesus, as you can see, we're not doing what you told us to do. We're actually a dictatorship in the name of religion. right? What
Yeah.
you asked of humanity was way too much. You asked for everybody to be fully responsible, to be morally responsible, to live up to the potential of a human being, of a soul and a body, and being responsible. You asked
Yeah.
way too much. You're
Dang it.
guilty. You're guilty. And we're going to imprison you. Get lost. Let us do our dictatorship in the name of religion here. Get out of here. Is that fascinating? So he's cutting to the chase that even when you're working in the name of religion, it doesn't mean you're being fully godly. And that body-soul conflict is still there. And he represented that. So that's really the push and pull. And the Jewish people, and just because you're Christian, just because you're Jewish, doesn't mean you're righteous. You have to do it. You have to really do it. You get a little assistance from a good system and some good wisdom, but you still, at the end of the day, you got to use your free will and be a good person. And that's not easy on a day-to-day basis. And that not easiness, it'd be easier to be freed from that burden. The human part of the human being wants to be freed from that burden. And when you want to be freed from that burden and you're a dictator, and you say, can we do something with the Jews? Can we get rid of the Jews?
Yeah.
Because they're bothering me.
That is, I think, when you were describing some of these things, like Hitler doesn't want the Jews carrying this message, and it just, the straight and narrow path is not easy, right? And that is what, as believers, Jews or Christians particularly, we have a very specific set of expectations we're expected to live up to, and and it can be a challenge. It is much easier to just give into your desires, to give into the flesh, and just do whatever you want. The problem is it doesn't usually end well. Your life doesn't normally go well. It doesn't provide for maximum human flourishing.
Right. And really, that's what
Rabbi,
it's about. No.
In the time we have left, I have what to me is a seminal question. And I think your work is prolific and far-reaching, and you've had 150 million people, see the different movies and things. So your reach is incomparable. What I've always asked people, though, is facts are one thing. How do you move hearts and minds? Because in my estimation, until we can change hearts and minds, because as I've said, and again, I want to also, and I was actually remiss, I wanted to thank you for being also one of the featured speakers in Israel Appreciation Day, which was our event last September as well. Very important piece. And the reason I bring it up is what we're trying to do is move hearts and minds. And how do you do that? Right? You can give them the facts. and I think your perspective, certainly through Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew, is absolutely groundbreaking in terms of its thought leadership, in terms of trying to sort of reestablish the internal spiritual rudder for people, right? But how do you get to hearts and minds? Because just Jews supporting Jews doesn't move the needle anymore.
Right.
How do you reach hearts and minds?
So I think it's a great question, and I think in the end of the day, I'm an eternal optimist. I don't know where it comes from. I think it is a Jewish trait, but I think that, as I said, human beings are made up of a soul and body, and I think ultimately, like Ericka was just saying, is that it works better. Being an upright spiritual human being works better, and when you speak in that language of spirituality, of meaning, of goodness, of connection, ultimately that lifts people. And you're right, it's a struggle. The Jewish people have been struggling with exactly this issue for 3,000 years. It's not easy, and you're right, it doesn't go by facts. But we just got to keep going one day at a time and trying to inspire people. At the end of my book, I go to 15 different stories. I just tell stories of people who have faced hatred, faced the anti-Semitism, Jews and non-Jews, and they responded with spiritual and moral grace, dignity, and strength. And they became more Jewish. They became pro-Israel. They stood up to the evil, and they feel good about it. And when you feel good about it, so I think it's about the inspiration of it all. And I think we have to really always just focus on that positive side of the story, which is why I feel, Jews, we spend too much time talking about anti-Semitism. Let's talk the positive side of our story. Let's inspire ourselves and the world together to help bring the world to what the purpose is. And I'm confident it will, because we've seen, Ericka knows the prophecies, you know the prophecies. We've seen all the prophecies fulfilled already. We know the plot line. We know where it's going. It's going to end good. It's just a bumpy road to get there.
I love that. That just tickled me so much. I don't even know what to say. But you're right. And that's like, Ben, like, I don't want to talk about the fact that Black people were just slaves. Black people were more than just slaves. There's more to Jewish people than the Holocaust. Like, I think it's
for your own sake. Move on.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Again, not that we should ever forget, because never forget, but there's more to the Jewish people, and I would love to see that really flourish and be celebrated more than being a victim.
Agreed.
Rabbi, cannot thank you enough for joining us on the show. Truly an inspiration. Ericka, can we pull up the book cover again, please?
Yes.
Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? Available everywhere. And it is not about anti-Semitism, as the rabbi has said. It is about understanding faith and religion and reestablishing what it is to be, I'll use the word, pious and righteous, and it's just a powerful book.
Yeah.
Rabbi, I cannot thank you enough to joining us on Other People. And again, thank you for being part of Israel Appreciation Day as well last September.
Yes.
My pleasure. Keep up the good work, and thank you so much for having me on your show.
We'd love to have you back again as your time allows.
My pleasure.
All right. So we're going to go to a quick break from one of our sponsors. All right, y'all.
Of course. Here's got to do business.
Got to do it.
America came into being based on a shared belief and a common set of values. Unlike other nations that were bound together based on common ancestry, race, or caste, we came into being based on a simple and shared set of ideals. That the power of government is based on the consent of the governed. That life, the freedom to live life on our own terms in our own way, free from government interference, and liberty, our most precious value, and the pursuit of happiness, which means we are free to pursue that which we choose, with the knowledge and courage to know that nothing is guaranteed to us in this life. Those values, America was founded on these basic inalienable rights: freedom to pray to God in our own way, freedom to think and speak freely without fear of punishment or harm, and freedom to gather in our places of worship and in our local taverns, and freedom to defend ourselves, our families, our homes, and our neighbors as we see fit. The American Center for Education and Knowledge is dedicated to protecting American exceptionalism anywhere and everywhere it is threatened. ASIC is a 501c3 and depends on your tax-deductible donations. Please help us continue our fight.
And we are back. Do you know one of the reasons I love talking with him? As a martial arts guy, what he's talking about is spiritual jujitsu, right? is taking, that negative force coming at you and using it, against you. Can you do that move again? I want to just see that with the hands.
I don't know what I did.
Is this like pushing in the hand? This is like, I love that.
Yeah, some Muay Thai or something. I don't know.
No, Muay Thai, you look like this with your arms up, and you're not tall. You're not tall enough with not enough calluses on you. But
oh no, wait, what is Tai Chi? That's what it is.
Close. Tai Chi, Chinese, Muay
They
Thai,
both have
Thai.
Thai in the name. It's the same, bro. Okay.
Too funny. I want to thank Rabbi Shore again. That was really enlightening. The one
Yes.
thing we didn't get to is because he does say in the book that there are 4 weapons, right? And what he calls Jewish weapons of the spirit, right? Prayer, Torah study, ethical observance, and belief in God and his plans. That's the armor, right? And next time maybe we can talk a little more about that. But I love being the fighter. I love the jujitsu aspect of it. So again, Rabbi Shore, if you're listening, thank you. The book again, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew, available everywhere.
Yeah, check out the description, you guys. We've got his websites and links and socials and everything. So
Absolutely.
go check him out.
Okay, so as we close the show, where's the outrage? By the way, no, not that. Get that out of there.
Oh, whoops. Oh, wait. No, that wasn't supposed to happen. Hold on. Sorry. My bad. I was trying to remove it from the stream. Sorry. My bad.
No, that's okay.
All right.
So I was watching the press secretary today, and we got to go back to politics, of course.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about Doge. And by the way, now I think that, you want to Doge people, right? I think Doge is now a verb.
It's now a verb. Oh, yeah. People are getting Doged.
People are getting Doged.
To get laid off. Yeah.
Right. But to me, what happened today is if you were watching the press conference, Karen Levitt comes out and says that the White House Correspondents Association, basically the newspaper people who are always in the press room, no longer are going to determine who sits in that room. They've had that monopoly for like 40 years. So the White House is now going to determine who's going to be in that room, which to me is probably more important than Doge.
Wait, I'm sorry, Robert. Catch me up here. Okay.
So today,
why would they get to choose who goes in there?
Okay. I can't tell you how it came about. I can just tell you it's been 40 years, give or take, that the White House Correspondents Association, and it's the big 5, right? What they're calling the mainstream media, which, by the way, we're going to get to in a second, basically said, here's who not only can be in the room, but here's who gets to ask questions.
Wow.
Right? Trump does not get elected a second time unless he is able to go around what is traditionally been called the Main Street media.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. Which we're going to change that in a second. So today what they did, which I think, most people aren't going to really key in on the significance yet, is not only did they set up that one seat for, a social influencer in the press room. You heard about that, right?
Yep.
Okay. And you can apply. I don't think we're ever going to get on, but we did apply as a social influencer for that seat. So if we get it, Ericka, you're going.
I'm going.
Okay.
I'm writing that down.
But now they're breaking the monopoly of the White House Correspondents Association to who's in the room and who gets to ask questions.
Good.
That is one of the most, it's small, but one of the most brilliant moves by the Trump administration. And again, you're going to see people who say that, that he's only wants sycophants around him and he only wants, they're going to paint it in the worst way. But what it really does is it allows real news and real questions to come in to the White House, because you probably don't remember, many years ago, I wrote an article called An Honest Broker, where I was railing against the fact that journalism is no longer honest or sacred, and that people are pushing their political agenda.
That's
and that
right.
Edward R. Murrow, the father of American journalism, would be rolling over in his grave.
Yeah.
But, because of that, because they're not honest brokers of information.
That's right.
They're not telling you what the facts are. They're telling you what to think about events.
Well, and you can tell that by the way questions are framed and the underlying premise. I just can't even. The difference between the way the press secretary Karen Jean-Pierre was treated under the Biden administration,
right,
versus the way Sarah Huckabee Sanders was treated, and Kayleigh McEnany, and oh my God, Sean Spicer, which I know that was but like they were cruel to them. And every question, the underlying premise was, since Donald Trump is a vicious racist and you guys are all a bunch of scumbags, here's my question that no matter what you answer, you're going to sound like a terrible, horrible person.
Well, agreed. the point, though, that I don't want to lose here is as big and important as Doge is, because it's big and it's splashy and it's all over the news. I will argue that, and look, everyone wants government to be efficient, accountable, transparent, and save us money, especially if you're spending our money, right? OPM,
That's right.
other people's money.
Yes.
But I'm going to argue that long term, this move, which most people are not going to focus on, which is breaking the monopoly of the White House Correspondents Association to determine who's in the room and who gets to ask questions, is as important as Doge long term to the health of this country, if not more important, because it now brings fresh air into the room and the ability to have, not both coasts, if you will, or the elite media be the ones to control the messaging that comes out of the White House. Let's call them the Jim Acostas of the world.
Yep.
Right. CNN,
who's been fired, by the way.
I know, you and I were on the last show and we talked about that. I know you have a short memory, but I know he was fired. By the way, but last but not least, we have to pull up the one video of the day. I mean, this reminds me of a line from Forrest Gump where Tom Hanks says, well, Mama always said that stupid is as stupid does. Okay. So we have a woman, and let's see, what is her name here? Her name is, at least her handle was, I don't know where it is. There it is. Sarah C. Roberts. So she goes on to
Sarah Roberts.
She goes on to TikTok and basically calls for, number one, the assassination of Elon Musk.
Oh.
Right. And then she goes on to rant about how, you all aren't going to do anything. And I haven't paid my taxes in 8 years and you haven't come after me yet. You're going to have to raise the volume. But you got to hear, if you haven't, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not on TikTok. I get it indirectly. But if you haven't seen this, this is jaw dropping.
I promised myself I would avoid the news. But obviously I haven't. Here's my one thought.
Apparently she should have.
Does. Elon Musk. We need to X him. And by X, I mean formerly known as assassination.
Formerly known as assassination. That's what you just said.
And it's one
on TikTok.
I was going to fucking show up. Arrest me. You don't have enough people to even investigate me at this point. I haven't filed my taxes in 8 years. And yet,
let's pull it down.
What?
No one's good for me.
So she's on TikTok and she talks about, she makes the cut your throat.
Assassinate some motherfuckers.
Right.
Oh, whoopsie. Okay, hold on. We got to change up your mic here. Hold on. Go ahead.
So she talks about, makes the sign about cutting him off, cutting him, decapitating him, and then says we need to murder him, and then we need to assassinate some MFs, right? And then, right, you gotta love this, right? And then she talks about how I've paid my taxes in 8 years, and you guys haven't come after me. So
why would you say that?
Well, Mama always said stupid is as stupid does. Okay, but
whether it's true or not, that's still stupid.
Well, but here's the best thing. U.S. Attorney Ed Martin gets wind of this on Twitter because the libs of TikTok put it up on Twitter. The U.S. Attorney, after she publicly threatens to assassinate, mother effers, right? And specifically murder Elon Musk, he says, U.S. Attorney Ed Martin says to this woman, what's her name again? Sarah C. Roberts. Yeah, by the way, her account's down. But so the U.S. Attorney says to the woman, duly noted, thanks for letting us know. We'll put you in the system. Talk soon, ma'am. I mean, it's like instant karma. How stupid are these people? Right? You sit there and you're like, it's amazing to me.
I've heard this before and it didn't really make sense to me that people disconnect online from reality. This is like people who pick their nose in the car when they're driving because the windows are up. They think nobody can see them. I mean, what? I can't. I don't know. I guess people are just trying to get clicks and clout and whatever. Wow. 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 Ben says it's not different than
well,
politicians. What are you talking about? They're
what
stupid
people,
narcissists.
yeah, but wait a minute. What's my standard line? Where's the outrage?
I
I mean,
love
so
it.
I mean, it's just in any event. So I understand we're up against the hour. I'm just speechless. It's just to be so stupid
Yeah.
as to publicly call for the assassination. Let's call him a public official, if not a public figure.
Yeah, he is a
And then, by the
official
way,
now.
right. And then, by the way, to say, oh, and by the way, I haven't paid my taxes for 8 years, and you know, come get me. I mean, may I remind you, Miss Roberts, whatever your name is, they put Al Capone in jail for tax evasion. Okay, so if they can get him, they can come get you.
Ah. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Go support our sponsor, asicfund.org. Also, go to israelappreciationday.com. Right?
.com. Great merch.
Right? Get
Great
some merch, bro. The artwork that was commissioned for the event is now on bags and hats and mugs and thermoses and stuff like that. So go get your merch. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. What am I missing?
You're not missing a thing.
All right then, ladies and gentlemen.
We
You'll
will
have to
see
come
you
visit us
next week.